here we go. Start of hour 2. This is The Herd. Wherever you may be and however you may be listening, we are live in Los Angeles, iHeartRadio, Fox Sports Radio, and FS1. Joy Taylor is joining me. Lively first hour. In the middle of the first hour, the Raiders made another deal. They have acquired Trent Brown, offensive lineman, left tackle. $66 million, $37 guaranteed, highest paid offensive lineman in NFL history. You cannot convince me this is a good deal. He goes from Dante Scarnecchia, the best offensive line coach perhaps in NFL history, to Tom Cable, who left Seattle and the Seahawks offensive line got better. And went to the Raiders and their offensive line's gotten worse. So you can't convince me this is a good deal. Joy Taylor is joining us. How are you, Joy?
I'm great. Good morning.
Good morning. So the Raiders are all in, making all sorts of deals. This doesn't feel like it was part of the plan. They're kind of making it up as they go. Every Monday at this time, we just don't feel that people admit in our business they're wrong. And everybody's wrong all the time. And so we call it where Colin was right, where Colin was wrong, my missteps in the last week. Here we go.
Where Colin was right.
Danny Amendola, after a one-touchdown season with the Dolphins, has been released by the Dolphins. When New England bails on an aging player, always early, never late, they're almost always right. By the way, Amendola was on the show. He's a good guy. He was perfect in their system. But he just signed on with Detroit. This was one of the moves where people said, oh, boy, Danny Amendola. And he had a couple of really nice moments in New England. I would not suggest he didn't. One touchdown. Dolphins had him, paid a lot for a year, and he's gone. Patriots right again.
Where Colin was wrong.
I said last couple of years that the Western Conference of the NBA was a little overstated. It's better than the East, but let's not make it into the SEC in football where it's just so dominant. But Portland's better, Oklahoma City appears better, and Denver got way better. San Antonio is shockingly good, and the Lakers are now an 11th seed, potentially a 13th seed, a 14th seed by the end of the season. Last 10 games, they're 2-8. And LeBron with a bunch of young guys never even threatened to make it interesting after the All-Star break. The West is simply better than I gave it credit for most of this year.
Where Colin was right.
Everybody bailed on the Celtics. Oh, my God. Man overboard. And I said, time out. They'll get it together. Best coach in the East. Best roster in the East. Most playoff experience in the East. Most playoff success not connected to LeBron last several years in the East. They're going to be fine. Well, what do you know? They're playing great basketball. They've won 4 of 5. They crushed the Warriors at Oracle. And for the record, Gordon Hayward's playing very well. Last 3 games, averaging almost 20 and shooting 70%. Kyrie Irving seems to be better balanced since they had that little flight west and he got to sit down with the coaches. Don't always buy into every little drama in the regular season. For stars and good teams, the regular season can be a drain, not only physically but emotionally, and the Celtics are fine.
Where Colin was wrong.
I thought Rajon Rondo was actually one of the pickups the Lakers made that would really work. High IQ, tough. He'd be exactly what the doctor ordered. He's never worked with the Lakers. Optically, it's been a disaster. He's disengaged with his teammates and his coaching staff. He got into that fight with Chris Paul. He's rarely healthy. He's not in the least bit elevated Lonzo Ball. There's generally a reason why certain guys in the NBA bounce from team to team to team. And Rondo, there's a reason. By the way, he struggled to get along with Doc Rivers, one of the nicest guys in pro sports. He struggled to get along with Rick Carlisle. They bailed on him, and Rick Carlisle's a pretty easy guy to get along with, highly respected. The Rondo deals, I thought it made sense. It's never worked.
Where Colin was right.
A couple years ago, I got in trouble at the old place because I called out James Dolan of the New York Knicks. I called him a meatball. I said he was the most insecure owner in the NBA, the most incompetent, and I felt bad for Knicks fans. Well, he took it to another level of insecurity this weekend, having this confrontation with a fan.
Sell the team!
Anything I should sell the team? You want to not come to any more games?
Why?
That's rude.
It's an opinion.
No, it's not an opinion. And you know what? Enjoy watching them on TV.
Really? Because a fan didn't throw anything, didn't make any threats. A fan yelled, "Sell the team," and you're going to now kick him out of the arena. I mean, Adam Silver is to a point. Is he not sitting in his office thinking, I got to find a buyer for the New York Knicks? I mean, Dolan is just remarkably insecure for a billionaire. It's hard to get your arms around how insecure he is.
Where Colin was wrong.
I laughed at my staff last week when they theorized a conspiracy theory. They said, LeBron went to watch Zion Williamson, saw how physically dominant he was, and thought to himself, hey, Magic, it's time to tank. Well, the Lakers are 2-9 since then. Lonzo Ball suddenly can't play for the rest of the year. LeBron's minutes have been reduced. He won't play back-to-backs. And, by the way, Kyle Kuzma now with a slight sprain may also miss significant time. Clearly, the Lakers are in tanking mode. That's not to say Lonzo Ball wasn't injured, but rest of the season, Kyle Kuzma, LeBron's never once limited time off the floor. Now, Brandon Ingram has a serious medical condition. I will not include him. But it is more than interesting that since LeBron visited Zion, they're not even competitive now. I mean, this is like a bad, subtle tank job. I mean, they're all in on it. Maybe I was wrong.
Where Colin was right.
I had my doubts about Russell Westbrook being restrained. New and improved Russell Westbrook, limiting his shots. Well, what do you know? Oklahoma City is in their last 10, 3-7 since he started shooting again, shooting 24 shots a game. He is incapable of being a great teammate long term. I kept saying, I'll believe it when I see it in the playoffs. He's not capable of being a 16-point shot a game guy. He is now shooting in the last 10 games 25 shots a game, shooting 9.5 threes a game. His plus-minus over the 10-game stretch is minus 47. And OKC was in solid position at third, is now tied for fourth. In the end, people are what they are. As Chris Broussard says, your game is your game. And Paul George is not benefiting from this.
Where Colin was wrong.
Because I had Paul George as the MVP 2 weeks ago. His last 3 games, he's shooting 31%. As Westbrook is shooting more, his stock is plummeting. He's now a distant third in the MVP race. He's missing open looks. He's frustrated. And suddenly he is struggling. And I said 2 weeks ago and last week that he's the best two-way player in the league. Kawhi's great, but is often not available. And Giannis is great, but doesn't control games late because he doesn't shoot threes. Paul George, as Westbrook, the old Westbrook has emerged, Paul George is no longer an MVP leading candidate.
Where Colin was right.
The new football league, the AAF. I've said spring football will work and watch it get elevated. Well, what do you know? TNT announced they're going to televise 2 extra games. They've watched the product. They want to put it on. By the way, the NFL is considering a rule being used by the AAF, an onside kick rule. And people are paying attention to this league. Sports networks are absolutely, when Vince McMahon did his football thing years ago, you didn't have 32 sports networks all clamoring for live sports programming. But live sports programming is now the only thing that gets a rating on television. It's Netflix or live sports. And so this league, a spring football league for 8 to 10 weeks, it's got everybody's attention. The NFL is going to borrow one of its kickoff rules, and TNT is now going to add games this year.
Where Colin was wrong.
When those Kyler Murray #1 rumors came out, I thought he's tiny. They just drafted a quarterback. I think they like Josh Rosen. But last week, it appears that it's more than a 50-50 proposition. That Kyler Murray, the little guy, 5'9", 5'10", this is kind of the new standard in the NFL. If a guy's that athletic, you're not going to worry about his height. You're just going to go with it. Big 12 quarterbacks, people used to wince. Now between Mahomes and Baker Mayfield, they're the hot quarterbacks because more of the Big 12 offense is coming to the NFL. I never thought Arizona would bail on Rosen, mostly because they just picked him in the top 10. And they had whiffed on many of their first-round picks. And if they moved off Rosen, I thought it was suggesting they whiffed on that one too. But they got Cliff Kingsbury. He's got a worker. Everybody's getting flushed out and fired in Arizona. And it looks like this is more now than a 50-50 proposition. Coming up next, Chris Broussard joins me. The suggestion to trade LeBron may sound foolish. I'm not sure it is. And what do we make of Lonzo Ball and Brandon Ingram no longer key or attractive trade pieces? That's coming up. When it comes to costly car repairs, you need options. You need an out. You need help. You don't want to be stuck bargain hunting for the best deal because you can't afford to fork over $1,300 for some transmission issue you didn't plan for. That's where CarShield.com comes in. Extended vehicle protection. They make the process of fixing your car for a covered repair easy. Favorite mechanic? You choose. Even go to your dealership where you bought the car. Roadside assistance? Offer 24